Ridge Reckoning. Eli Foster, Pisgah National Forest, North Carolina. The road has a way of calling to a man when the world turns sour, its asphalt veins promising escape, a balm for wounds too fresh to name. My name is Eli Foster, and in the autumn after losing my job at the consulting firm, a sterile cage of glass and fluorescent hum, I heard that call louder than ever. Maggie, my wife, saw the cracks forming, the way my hands shook over coffee cups, the way silence replaced our conversations. "Take a break," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Go on one of those RV trips you always talked about. Reconnect with nature. You need it." She was right, as she often was. I needed something to scour the rust from my soul, to reset a mind tangled in unemployment's thorns. So I rented a 2012 Winnebago, a lumbering beast with faded paint and a hum that rattled my bones, packed it with essentials: canned food, fishing gear, a worn Hemingway paperback, and aimed for the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina, their peaks a jagged promise against the sky. The trip began as you'd expect, a slow unwinding of tension through winding mountain roads, the air crisp with pine and freedom. I'd stop at scenic overlooks, the vistas stretching like a painter's dream, and hike trails I'd read about in dog-eared outdoor magazines, my boots crunching on gravel and leaves. By the third day, I craved deeper solitude, a place untouched by the chatter of tourists or the drone of engines. Online, I'd found a lesser-known campground tucked within Pisgah National Forest. Remote, quiet, miles from the nearest town, a speck called Brevard. It was perfect. The dirt road in was a rutted scar, the Winnebago groaning as it navigated the twists. But when I reached the site, the world fell away. Towering pines encircled a small clearing, their branches interlocking overhead, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth, a far cry from the office's sterile chill. I set up camp, leveling the RV on uneven ground, and noted the emptiness. Only an older couple in a beat-up Winnebago lingered at the lot's far end. I waved, a reflex of civility, but their faces, tight, pale, etched with something like fear, barely registered me. I shrugged it off. Antisocial types, I figured, drawn to solitude like me. The woods beckoned, their density a lure I couldn't resist. I followed a narrow, overgrown path, the underbrush snagging at my jeans, until it spilled me out at a secluded lake. The water was a mirror, still and dark, reflecting the canopy above with an eerie precision. Not a ripple stirred its surface, and for a moment, I stood mesmerized, the silence a weight I could feel. I was about to unpack my fishing rod when something caught my eye. Deep scratches gouged into the trunks of nearby pines, parallel and precise, unlike any animal markings I'd seen. They were too clean, too deliberate, not the ragged chaos of a bear or the shallow scratches of a bobcat. A shiver crept up my spine, but I pushed it down. Must be some big cat marking its territory, I reasoned, though doubt gnawed at me. I fished anyway, the rhythmic cast of the line soothing my nerves, the lake's stillness a hypnotic pull. Hours slipped by, the sun dipping low, painting the sky in bruise-like hues. Dusk brought a change, a silence so absolute it pressed against my ears. The usual chorus of birds and insects had vanished, replaced by an oppressive hush that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I packed up quickly, an inexplicable urgency driving me back to the RV, the path now a tunnel of shadow. The trees, once majestic, loomed like silent sentinels, their twisted branches clawing at the darkening sky. My heart thudded, my pace quickening until I was nearly jogging, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, a gaze I couldn't place boring into me from the gloom. When I broke into the clearing, relief was a fleeting guest, until I saw it, standing in the campground's heart, directly before my RV. At first, I thought it was a wolf, its silhouette hulking against the dim light. But as I edged closer, my breath caught, a cold fist tightening in my chest. This was no dog, no beast I could name. It was hunched, its back arched in a way that defied anatomy, limbs too long and slender, joints bending at unnatural angles. Its skin was a mottled gray, stretched taut over bones that jutted like knives, and its legs thin, elongated, deer-like. ended in claws where hooves should have been. The head was too large, a snout jutting out like a boar's, its jaw gaping wide enough to swallow me whole, lined with jagged teeth that glinted in the fading light. It turned slowly, nostrils flaring as if tasting my fear, and I froze, instincts screaming to run while my legs betrayed me. It tilted its head, almost curious, then let out a low chuffing noise that reverberated through the asphalt beneath my feet. A sound that wasn't animal, wasn't human, but something older, something wrong. It took a step forward, claws clicking, then another, and my paralysis shattered. I sprinted for the RV, hands fumbling with the keys, dropping them once, twice, the metal clinking against the ground like a death knell. The creature's shadow loomed closer, its breath a wet rasp, and I dove inside, slamming the door as it lunged. The RV shook, claws scraping metal with a screech that set my teeth on edge. I scrambled to the driver's seat, jamming the keys into the ignition, the engine roaring to life as the vehicle rocked again. Flooring the gas, I swerved wildly, tires squealing as I tore from the campground, the rearview mirror showing it giving chase, its elongated limbs carrying it at a speed no living thing should muster. The road was a nightmare of ruts and roots, the RV bouncing as I pushed it beyond reason, my knuckles white on the wheel. It followed, a gray blur crashing through the trees, until the forest thinned and I lost sight of it, the main road a lifeline I clung to. I didn't stop until dawn, pulling over on a highway shoulder, shaking so badly I could barely call Maggie. I mumbled about sickness, needing to come home, unable to voice the truth. How do you describe a thing that defies naming? Back in Charleston, I tried to resume normalcy, but Maggie saw the fracture in me, though she didn't press. Days later, a news report froze me. 2 hikers missing in Pisgah. Their bodies found mauled beyond recognition. Deep scratches on nearby trees. The anchor blamed a bear, but I knew better. I turned off the TV, staring at the blank screen, the chuffing echoing in my skull. That thing was still out there, a shadow in the wild, and I'd escaped its jaws by inches. The RV sits unused now, a monument to a freedom I'll never reclaim. Its dent's a silent witness to the unseen. The Idaho Abyss. Milo Ridley, Northern Idaho. Solitude has always been my truest companion. A quiet I've chased across the years like a man hunting a shadow he'll never catch. My name is Milo Ridley, an independent contractor whose life is a patchwork of drywall, dust, and asphalt. Job to job, state to state, with no roots to tether me. My RV, a battered 1998 Fleetwood, its paint chipped like old skin, its engine a growl I've come to trust, is my sanctuary, a mobile haven where the world's noise fades to a whisper. In the autumn, after a grueling summer of endless drywall installs, I felt the pull of the wild stronger than ever, a need to shed the weight of fluorescent-lit warehouses and the chatter of foremen. Northern Idaho promised what I craved. A wilderness so vast it swallowed towns whole, its pines towering like sentinels over a land where the nearest speck of civilization, a gas station called Pine Hollow, was a 2-hour drive through rutted logging roads. I aimed for a clearing I'd heard about from a grizzled trucker at a diner, a place off an old timber trail, unmarked on maps, where the silence was said to be absolute. The drive was a slow descent into isolation, the road narrowing as it wound through hills cloaked in evergreen, the air growing sharp with resin and earth. I passed no one, the only signs of life the occasional deer darting across the path, its eyes glinting in my headlights. By late afternoon, I reached the clearing, a flat patch of dirt ringed by pines that scraped the sky, their branches interlocking overhead like a cathedral's ribs. The quiet hit me first, a stillness so deep it seemed the world held its breath. I parked the RV, its tires crunching on gravel, and stepped out, the scent of damp needles filling my lungs. This was it, freedom, solitude, a place to breathe. I built a small fire, the crackle of twigs a comforting rhythm, and settled into a folding chair with a cold beer, watching flames dance against the encroaching dusk. The first 2 nights were a balm, days spent hiking faint trails, nights under a canopy of stars, The winds rustle and an owl's call, the only sounds to break the hush. The third night tore that peace apart. I was sipping my beer, the fire's embers casting long shadows, when a sound drifted from the forest. A low, rhythmic thumping, steady and deliberate, like footsteps too heavy for a deer, too measured for wind. It came from the west, beyond the tree line, faint but insistent, a pulse that set my teeth on edge. I sat up, straining to hear, but it faded as quickly as it began. My mind spun excuses, a woodpecker, a branch falling in the dark, but the quiet that followed was heavier, as if the forest listened back. I shrugged it off, the beer's chill grounding me, and turned in, locking the RV's flimsy door more out of habit than fear. Sleep came fitful, dreams of endless roads twisting into shadow, and when dawn broke, I stepped outside to a sight that turned my stomach cold. Tracks circled the clearing, massive, deep impressions in the soft dirt, larger than any bear's, with claws too long, too sharp, digging into the earth like knives. They weren't haphazard, not the chaos of an animal foraging, but a deliberate ring around my camp, as if something had paced the perimeter while I slept. I crouched, tracing one with a trembling finger, the print dwarfing my hand, its edges crisp in the morning light. I've seen bear tracks, broad, blunt, familiar, and these were different, alien, more like something from a nightmare than a field guide. My pulse quickened, but I clung to reason. A freakish bear, I told myself, a mutant of the wild. I had a shotgun in the RV, a 12-gauge I'd bought for peace of mind, and I wasn't about to let some oversized beast chase me from my retreat. I spent the day reinforcing that lie, hiking deeper into the woods, the tracks fading from my mind as the sun climbed higher. By the fourth night, that comfort shattered. The thumping returned, closer, louder, a reverberation that shook the RV's frame, rattling the dishes in the sink. I grabbed the flashlight and shotgun, the metal cold against my palms, and stepped into the chilly air, the fire's dying glow casting the forest in flickering menace. "Who's there?" I called, my voice swallowed by the dark, but the silence mocked me. I swept the beam across the trees, its light swallowed by the underbrush, revealing nothing. No eyes, no movement, just the oppressive hush. Then I saw it, crouching at the clearing's edge. A figure massive and hunched, its fur matted and dark, limbs twisted in ways that defied nature. Its head was too large, a snout stretched too far forward, wolf-like yet wrong, its silhouette a violation of the wild I knew. It stared, motionless, and I froze, breath catching in my throat, the shotgun a toy in my hands against such a thing. It darted then, a blur of speed that defied its bulk, vanishing into the trees before I could react. My legs felt like lead, but I stumbled back to the RV, slamming the door, locking it with hands that wouldn't steady. I sat by the window, shotgun across my lap, waiting, the night a wall of black beyond the glass. Hours passed, the silence a weight pressing down, and I thought it gone, until dawn revealed the truth. Tracks everywhere, hundreds of them, surrounding the RV, weaving in and out of the trees, some so fresh the dirt still crumbled at their edges. It had circled me all night, a predator's dance around its prey, and I'd sat blind to its game. Panic clawed at me, but I packed quickly, throwing gear into the RV with shaking hands, the shotgun never leaving my side. Driving out, the road twisted through the forest, my eyes darting to the mirrors, half expecting that thing to lunge from the shadows. Then I saw it, a body in the road, torn apart, limbs scattered like discarded toys, blood soaking the dirt. A man, or what was left of him, his face a ruin, his chest ripped open as if something had played with him before leaving the remains. Tracks led from the corpse back into the woods, fresh and deep, and I slammed on the brakes, hands trembling on the wheel. There was nothing I could do. He was gone, dead hours or less, and I knew what had done it. I floored the gas, the RV lurching forward, not stopping until Pine Hollow's gas station loomed ahead, its flickering sign a lifeline. The attendant's face went pale when he saw the blood on my RV's bumper, my ramblings about a creature and a body spilling out in a rush. He called the sheriff, who found the remains exactly where I'd said, tracks and all. But the official report called it a bear attack. I saw the fear in the sheriff's eyes, though. He knew it wasn't a bear, just like I did. I left Idaho that day, the open road still calling, but now I stick to highways, well-lit stops, crowded places. The RV's dense whisper of that night, and sometimes, in the quiet, I hear that thumping. A rhythm that haunts me, a promise that it waits still, patient as the pines. The Tahoe Terror. Kent Walker, Tahoe National Forest, California. The Tahoe National Forest was my father's unspoken legacy. A place he'd painted in words. Pine-scented air, clear lakes. A quiet that could heal a man's soul, though we never made the trip together. After his death, a sudden heart attack that left me reeling, I, Kent Walker, felt the pull to honor him there. I bought a 1982 Winnebago Brave, its frame weathered but sturdy, spending weeks patching leaks and painting over rust, turning it into a vessel for memory. In late summer, I set out from San Francisco, the city's hum fading as I drove north, the RV's engine a steady growl beneath me. Tahoe unfolded in layers, hills rolling into mountains, pines thickening until they swallowed the sky, and by mid-afternoon, I found my spot. A secluded clearing by a small lake, its water a mirror of blue beneath a canopy of green. The air was cool, sharp with resin and earth, and I set up camp, leveling the RV, gathering wood, breathing in a stillness that felt like coming home. The first day was a gift. I fished the lake, pulling trout from its depths, their scales glinting in the sun, and cooked them over a fire as dusk painted the sky in reds and golds. The forest hummed softly, leaves rustling, birds calling, fish splashing, and I sat by the flames, a beer in hand, thinking of my father, his quiet laugh, the way he'd cast a line with practiced ease. Night fell gentle, the stars piercing the canopy, and I slept deep, the RV's creaks a lullaby. The second day mirrored the first, more fishing, more quiet, a peace I hadn't known since he'd gone. But as dusk settled, a change crept in, a rumbling, low and resonant, drifting from the forest's depths. I dismissed it as wind or distant thunder, sipping my beer, but it persisted, growing louder, closer, a vibration I felt in my bones. Curiosity, that old fool, drove me to investigate. I grabbed a flashlight and my father's hunting knife, its blade worn but sharp, a comfort more than a weapon, and ventured into the woods. The beam cut through the dark, revealing twisted branches and underbrush, the air thickening with damp earth and something sour, like rot. 50 yards in, I found a muddy clearing, the ground scarred with deep grooves, as if something massive had torn through. Trees bore long, jagged streaks, bark stripped away, and there, in the center, a footprint. 3 times a man's size, clawed and deep, sinking into the earth like a grave. My heart thudded, the rational part of me scrambling for answers. A bear, a prank, but the print's edges were too crisp, too deliberate, and that rumbling was all around now, a heavy breath echoing from the shadows. The forest shifted, trees closing in like a trap, their branches clawing at me as I turned to flee. The path back twisted, the undergrowth tangling my feet, and that breath grew louder, wet and close, accompanied by a soft thumping. Footsteps, massive and measured, just beyond my light. I broke into the clearing, lungs burning, and doused the fire, hoping darkness would hide me. Locking myself in the RV, I sat by the window, knife in hand, the night a wall of black. The RV shook then, a violent jolt as something struck it, metal groaning under the impact. Another blow tilted it sideways, and I gripped the table, heart pounding, praying it would hold. Headlights flickered on as I fumbled for the keys, and there it was, 12 feet tall, fur-matted and dark, a face half human, half beast, eyes burning with malice through the glass. I floored the gas, the RV lurching forward, tires spinning in mud before finding traction. It lunged, claws scraping the side with a screech that pierced my skull, leaving deep gouges in the metal. I didn't look back, driving blind down the dirt road, the headlights bouncing wildly, the creature's form receding into the dark. Hours passed before I hit the highway, pulling into a gas station at dawn, the attendant's wide eyes tracing the shredded side of the RV. I shook my head, too shaken to explain, and drove home, swearing off the wild. The dents remain, a testament to a night that stole my peace, a shadow I'll never outrun. The Pisgah Phantom. Caleb Renfield, Pisgah National Forest, North Carolina. I'm Caleb Renfield, a mechanic from Charleston whose hands are more at home with engine grease than city streets. The wild is my sanity, a place where the hum of modern life fades to echoes, and my RV, an old, reliable beast, is my ticket out. Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, with its secret trails and dense woods, called to me after a friend's passing mention of its solitude. I drove up on a quiet day, the road unspooling beneath me, the forest rising in layers of green until I found a spot. Tucked off the main drag, a clearing canopied by pines, the air cool and crisp. I parked, set up a fire, and sank into a chair with Hemingway's To Have and Have Not, the forest's rhythm lulling me. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, a peace I craved. Dusk brought the first crack in that calm. The forest fell silent. Not the gradual quiet of night, but an oppressive hush that made my skin crawl. I poked the fire, dismissing it as imagination, but the unease clung, a feeling of being watched from miles of empty wild. Then came the rumbling, low, distorted, like an engine gone wrong, drifting from the trees. It grew closer, the ground trembling faintly, and I stood, flashlight in hand, calling into the dark. No answer, just silence, thick and waiting. I circled the RV, the beams slicing through shadows, expecting a bear, but finding nothing, until a crash jolted me awake hours later. The fire pit scattered, stones tossed like toys. Stepping out, the moon cast a silver glow, and there it was, at the clearing's edge, a hulking figure, fur-covered, its snout broad and boar-like, teeth jagged. The Gunnison Gloom. Curtis Malleary, Black Canyon of the Gunnison, Colorado. I'm Curtis Malleary, a graphic designer from Denver who trades city noise for wilderness peace when the screens burn my eyes. The Black Canyon of the Gunnison, a jagged scar in Colorado's heart, promised solitude. Its quiet a secret my buddy swore by. I drove my RV up late Friday, the sun dipping behind peaks that clawed the sky, parking in a clearing ringed by pines. The silence was eerie, perfect, and I hiked a trail, the scent of earth grounding me after months of stress. Back at camp, I built a fire, the flames a dance against the night, a beer cooling my nerves as stars pierced the dark. A thumping broke that peace, low, rhythmic, like something heavy striking the ground. It faded, then returned, closer, louder, and I stood, flashlight cutting through the dark, calling out to silence. A flash of pale movement slipped between trees, massive and swift, and my pulse quickened. I backed toward the RV, the thumping now a relentless beat, and a crash sent birds screeching skyward. There it stood, over 7 feet, pale skin stretched tight over muscle, claws like steel, teeth jagged in a mouth too wide. It watched, hungry, and charged as I bolted inside, the RV rocking under its blows. I waited, knife in hand, until it vanished at dawn, leaving no tracks, just a memory that haunts me, a wild I'll never reclaim. From Pisgah to Gunnison, the wild bears scars, gouged trees, torn metal, tracks too vast. A presence, hungry, relentless, stalks these forests, a shadow defying reason. Reader, could you park your RV in such silence, knife in hand, and face the thumping dark? Would you dare drive those roads, knowing what waits beyond the firelight? The forbidden excavation unearths this dread, daring you to listen where the wilderness breathes.